What is up, guys? It's Doodoo Poker here, back for another video. Today we are going to be talking about how population plays the call bet line as the 3-bet pot in position pre-flop caller, so we are the out of position pre-flop raiser. I have King 10 offsuit in the small blind, the button RFIs, and he is a reg, and I make a loose but still theoretically correct 3-bet, and the flop comes King 5-4 rainbow. We know from theory that solvers prefer bet 50 for the flop c-bet sizing, but I know how population plays against smaller sizing, so I decide to use a bet 20 sizing for range, which I think is fine. Both sizings would be fine in my estimation. And on the turn, after he calls flop, a queen of diamonds comes. Let's follow along in the GTO Wizard Elite. So on the turn, I decide to check my King 10 off. Now, I node lock this because a solver mostly bets King 10 off on the turn, but we have to think about population tendencies. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you think population overfolds or underfolds to a double barrel? Secondly, do you think population overstabs or understabs relative to theory once I check on the turn? Well, let's look at some MDA and try to figure some stuff out. This is the field as the 3-bet pot in position pre-flop caller called bet frequencies. You see, if I double barrel with my King 10 off, there's an overfold for every sizing if I go small on the flop. I have a value hand. I do not want a fold. Secondly, we also see in the call 30 bet, they're overstabbing. So 2 data points that make me want to check value more than theory. Now that's what I do is I check, and my opponent decides to stab around 66% and nothing else for me to do except call. Now a jack of hearts comes on the river, and I check to my opponent and he goes all in. Now we know that this is going to be around a 0 EV spot with our King 10 off, but why should I call? Well, we have to go over the nuances of this hand history. First, I'm going to give you the result. Some bad news. He actually hit runner perfect and won, but it's not about the results, it's about the process. So we have to think about all the data points in this hand. When my opponent stabs on the turn, we have to look at his sizing. He bet around 70%. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. What is the strongest turn stab sizing after calling a small flop c-bet from the 3-bet pot in position pre-flop caller? Is it bet 70? Is it bet 50? Or is it bet 30? Let's look at MDA and compare. This is the field as the 3-bet pot in position pre-flop caller, button versus blinds, call bet bet. This is bet 70. We see it's 34 weak on the river. Let's go to bet 50. Keep that 34 weak in the back of your mind. We go to bet 50 and we see it's 37 weeks. So we know the bet 70 on the turn is a stronger sizing than bet 50. We also need to go to bet 30. This is going to be counterintuitive, but the bet 30 is the strongest turn stab sizing. This is important. In game, my opponent used bet 2/3. So we know that is going to be a weaker than bet 30, but stronger than bet 50. So let's go to call bet 70 bet and see if it's over bluffed. Well, we see from data that 70 should be 30 weak and bet 100 should be 33. So it is over bluffed. But we need to get even more nitty gritty into the details. So I went to the AI and I put this hand history in, and I wanted to see what the artificial intelligence thought about my river call with the King 10 offhand, because I lost in game, but that doesn't tell the whole story. So what I do is I put this into the artificial intelligence on the King 5-4 Queen Jack run out on the call small on the flop, bet 66 on the turn bet, and we see that this is a 32 big blind positive EV call. This is very important because the AI relies on MDA, and it's played billions and billions of hands. Us as mere mortals only play maybe a couple million or maybe 10 million if you're lucky, but you're never ever going to play billions and billions of hands. So when you talk to the artificial intelligence, it's kind of like talking to someone that has played, 100 or 1,000x more hands than you have. So the artificial intelligence is a much better player than any human being. But the important point is this. I chose the Bet66 sizing and I compared this to a Bet33 sizing because in my data, Bet33 is the strongest turn stab sizing. And what do you guys notice? If I choose Bet33 instead of Bet66, it's still a profitable call down, but the EV drops by 17 big blinds. This trend you see in artificial intelligence, and you also see it in MDA. The turn small stab sizing is the strongest stab sizing. So let's go back. Let's go back to notes. We know the turn stab sizing is the strongest stab sizing, but we also want to think about other possible runouts. What would happen if the river was a jack of diamonds? Should I call on a call bet line on a flush complete river? Let's look at MDA and figure this out. I'm going to go to call 30, bet on flush complete rivers. What do you notice? You notice that the field as the 3-bet pot in position pre-flop caller, call bet, the flush complete river is not under bluffed. This may be surprising. Why is the flush complete river not under bluffed? Because population checks back too many flush draws on the turn. They're scared of getting check raised after they call a flop bet, so they check back too much. That means in the call check bet line, when the flush completes on the river, they're too strong, and in the call bet line, when the flush completes on the river, they're weaker than theory. So if I remix this hand and put the jack of diamonds, I should still also call. This is very important because we want to understand how the population plays this line for the call bet line, but also for alternative runouts and alternative lines. So let's go and do a conclusion of what we learned. We learned, number one, that the population is overstabbing on the turn. We see this in MDA when you bet small on the flop. We know call bet is going to be over bluffed as well. Let's look at MDA for button versus blinds. We see if you bet small on the flop that the call bet line is over bluff, so you want to call down with your 0 EV bluff catchers overall. We also know the flush complete river is not a bad data point to call down. Why? Because population is scared of getting check raised on the turn, and they check back too many flush draws on the turn. So in the call bet line, when the flush completes on the river, they don't have as many flushes as theory. All right, guys, I know this was a lot to take in, but we learned a lot in this lesson. We learned bet 30 is the strongest turn stab sizing. They over stab and over fold to a double barrel and over stab once they call flop small and stab on the turn. And the flush complete river is not a bad data point in the call bet line. If you enjoy this type of content, please give me a like, please give me a subscribe. New video every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.